Hey everybody, welcome to Now It's Dark. I'm Jim. I watched Imaginary 2024 PG-13, 1 hour and 44 minutes. PG-13. It's only got a 4.8 star rating on IMDb with almost 3,000 reviews. I mean, that's fair, right? 5 is kind of middle of the road. This is a horror mystery thriller. A woman returns to her childhood home to discover that the imaginary friend she left behind is very real and unhappy that she abandoned him. Written and directed by Jeff Wadlow, and writing credits also go to Greg Erb and Jason Ormland. And I kind of resisted watching this movie for a little while because of the PG-13 rating. I was kind of nervous. And also the baseline story is kind of tropey. A woman returning back to her childhood home and, whatever trauma that the home holds for her starts, that character starts to come back to life. And then plus, like the whole imaginary friend, possession, whatever it is, demon possession, like those aren't really like new to the horror genre, that kind of baseline storyline. But I have to say, like, I'm super glad I watched this movie. It's one of the better movies I've seen of this year. And I'm thinking of it in terms of the PG-13 rating. Like, I watched Five Nights at Freddy's and Megan, and that was also Blumhouse, just like this. And those were both PG-13, and I really enjoyed both of those movies. So I finally broke down. This is still in the theaters at the time that I filmed this. And I was very glad that I did. So Jessica is played by DeWanda Wise. She has a stepdaughter named Taylor, played by Tegan Burns. Alice, the little girl, Piper Braun. She was fantastic. I love when little kids, boys or girls, like are just really, really good in the role. Like she did so good. We have a neighbor, a nosy neighbor, Gloria, Betty Buckley, who's recognizable. You would know who she was. And then we have Dad Max, played by Tom Payne. So the dynamic is Max is the father of Taylor and Alice, even though he doesn't look quite old enough to be Taylor's father. She's 15. Alice is 5. Um, Jessica has a father named Ben, who we meet. He's in a home because he's just cuckoo cachoo. And we have a step or a biological mom to Taylor and Alice. And I think that was played by Alex Angelis. I think that character's name was Samantha. Yeah. And so it's really good dynamic. So it starts right off with um, not like a real clear explanation as to why Jessica is moving all of them into her childhood home. But it's the traditional stepkids are angsty towards stepmom for being stepmom and refuse to like be willing participants in the move. The dad is just kind of that buffer zone between the two, trying to just make everybody happy and get along. um, we find out that Jessica doesn't really remember her childhood trauma. Even when she gets to the house, she doesn't have um, recollections about that. And it's because she moved out when she was 5. But the nosy neighbor, Gloria, while everybody's doing their little move in, she kind of comes up to the scene. She strolls up and she kind of freaks Taylor out a little bit, but then she kind of gives Taylor some insight into her stepmom's childhood. And it is very apparent that Gloria remembers way more than anyone else, having been the neighbor. She knows what went on. And Gloria um, definitely plays a very significant role in this movie. She kind of dips out of the movie for a little bit, but then she's brought back in full force. And there's definite reason for that. In the meantime, Jessica is a children's book author and artist. So she's worked on Millie the Millipede book, and she's we see images from her book that she's created, and then we realize later in the film that those are, sub memories way back in her mind of some of the stuff that went on when she was a kid. So while they are in the house, they're trying to get acclimated. Jessica, stepmom, is trying to keep Alice entertained, and they decide to play hide and seek, kind of common thing to do with your kids. And while Jessica is supposed to be hiding, she gets a phone call, and she steps outside to take that phone call. Meanwhile, Alice counts to 10, and she's now looking for stepmom. She makes her way through the house, and she finds Chauncey the bear. And so she's very excited about that. And so when Jessica comes back in, she's like, you can tell she feels like she probably let Alice down because she was not, playing anymore. So she finds Alice in a room. Alice goes to the door and she's like, I have somebody else to play with now, and closes the door on the stepmom. And Jessica just shrugs that off as, she's mad at her. Now Jessica sees Chauncey, and at the little table, they're having a little tea party. And it doesn't click to her that, was her imaginary friend when she was a kid. It doesn't click yet. So things kind of ramp up. Taylor, that we do like a whole kind of character building arc with Taylor about being like that rebellious teen, and she kind of meets up with another neighbor boy who's just a little bit older, but not much. And Jessica decides she needs a break, and she goes to visit her dad at the assisted living home. She's trying to connect with him, and in the meantime, Taylor and that neighbor boy Liam, played by Matthew Sato, are in the house, and Alice is annoyed that there's a stranger in the house, and that's where we kind of get our first Chauncey interaction with a character, and it's with Liam, kind of like some jump scare stuff that do work. I definitely did have a few moments where I did jump. A lot of the jump scares are like that extremely loud music type, where you're almost jumping because the music gets so loud. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not necessarily the scene or the character jumping out from behind a corner or under a bed, but it's the music enhancing that moment because it gets like that super crazy loud. Um, so we definitely have some incidents happen. Jessica comes home, sees the kind of the aftermath of the Taylor and Liam thing. So it gets really, really amped up. So then Alice is really obsessed with her little bear, her friend, and starts going down like a path of really being so attached, obsessed with um, doing the typical kind of like imaginary friend thing where Alice would say, well, Chauncey doesn't want me to do this, or Chauncey says you're bad, or blah, blah, blah. But she does it in a really good way. It's not like a new storyline like we've seen this in other movies, but it's done really well here. Things kind of amp up. Alice does a few things that are way out of character for a 5-year-old girl. Needs to see some therapist and get some therapy. The therapist is freaked out, and then we kind of get some more background from Gloria, who has Taylor over just by chance. I'm trying not to give too many spoilers as to why, but Gloria seems to know a lot of what's going on, and Gloria has done like extensive research on the studies of imaginary friends in all different cultures and countries, and how there's like very similar threads about all the lore of imaginary friends and different names in all these cultures. And Taylor starts to realize that, okay, yeah, something's going on. At this point, Jessica realizes now that for sure she gets what's going on because of the therapy session with Alice when that's being discussed with her. from the therapist, Jessica has like this revelation, like, oh, because a term was used called the never ever. And the never ever is like the place where the imaginary friend goes and wants to take you. And there's a scene where Alice goes missing, by the way. It's a pretty important plot thread, but I don't want to give into much detail of it. But Alice goes missing, so Jessica knows then Alice must be at the Never Ever and needs to get in there to save her. And she's in her old bedroom trying to put together the sequence of things you have to do to be able to get into the Never Ever. And she's clearing out her room. And this was so obvious, but the music at that point was so Stranger Things, it made me double take. I'm like, are they really being this blatantly um obvious that this is Stranger Things music? And like the Stranger Things has the upside down, and so I don't know, they were kind of like doing a little subtle nod, but it wasn't so subtle. I mean, it was definitely Stranger Things music, just tweaked a little bit. It's not a bad thing. I just thought it was interesting. Um, so yeah, so Gloria, Taylor, Jessica now are all together. We got to go save Alice. Um, you start to wonder why Gloria has such a vested interest in also going into the Never Ever or helping them in there. Gloria explains it as having guilt for having let Jessica go to the Never Ever alone, and that Gloria claims that Jessica had been telling Gloria all this time, as a child, all of the imaginary friend stuff, because Gloria was the only one that would listen. Her own parents weren't necessarily buying into it, but Gloria was interested in it when Jessica was a kid and was listening to all that. And so you start to get a little suspicious of Gloria. Again, it's not like crazy, but you're just like, why is she so vested interested? But then the way it's explained, it makes sense, that she just felt guilty. She doesn't want to make sure claims that she doesn't want another kid to go missing um, because of her not being willing to try to help. So we have a whole cool sequence. I don't know if you've seen any clips or trailers online about the Never Ever. It's very well done, kind of neat. A lot of interesting imagery, blue light. The character of Chauncey is explained more in detail. The whole Never Ever is kind of explained really, really well. And it gets some really actiony stuff. And even for PG-13, there's some pretty there's a pretty good kill in the mix with some blood and everything. And for the most part, though, being PG-13, we're really getting our scare and horror factor from the enhanced appearance of Chauncey, and also just the music and the lighting and the mood setting. And so while in the Never Ever, Jessica gets more flashback as to the whole sequence of her dad and what her dad went through that Jessica had repressed in her memory to save Jessica. And so that put a whole new dynamic on Jessica's relationship or thought process with her dad. And it makes sense. So there's a couple of twists in it, twisty ending kind of a thing. I don't know, but it all gets resolved. Everybody makes it back home, and everybody is safe. At least we think, right? It's when with these types of movies, especially from Blumhouse, there's always something left um, open, so to speak. The door to the Never Ever is never truly closed. Let's just leave it at that. Um, I really recommend this movie. It's good. It's not, don't be afraid of the PG-13 rating. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Did you ever have an imaginary friend? I never did. I never had an imaginary friend, and maybe I should get one because I don't have friends now, and it gets kind of lonely here in the YouTube studio. But yeah, leave a comment down below, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and all that stuff, and keep coming back for more great videos.
Row 18, plot 20.